Unknown to us at the time, Black Adam was a huge movie for the future of DC live action and DC film. We didn't know that in behind the walls of power, Zaslav really wanted that movie to do well, make $1 billion, and literally allow The Rock to go full force on what he wanted to do, including bringing back Henry Cavill's Superman. Black Adam failed for 2 reasons. Hasn't failed as worse as this year's movie has, but Black Adam failed for David Zaslav for 2 reasons. First of all, it didn't get China. If it got China, it would have made a hell of a lot of more money. And second of all, people didn't ask for a Black Adam movie. They weren't hungry for a Black Adam movie. These were the 2 issues with Black Adam. But make no mistake, the reason that it flopped isn't because of the quality of the film. Great score, great cast, Aldis Hodge, Pierce Brosnan. The chemistry between Brosnan and Hodge is beautiful, and that chemistry between Hodge and The Rock was absolutely fantastic and brimming with the ego you want to see in a film like that. The quality of the film was not lacking, but it was a huge moment for Adby and DeLuca, and even the Snyderverse, if you like, and for Henry Cavill, because they were planning on bringing him back. They even used him to try and amp up the box office. Ultimately, it finished shy of just 400 million. And that was the decision that changed everything and brought in James Gunn. And James Gunn reversed the decision to bring in Henry Cavill back as Superman, and that created a problem. I'm going to read to you a little article very, very shortly asking, where have all the DC fans gone? Well, I can answer that question without reading that article, and it's a very good article, so we're going to read it for sure. Half of the DC fans have gone once you fired Snyder and lied that he left voluntarily, and you blamed the death of his daughter, the tragic suicide of Autumn. Once you did that, half the fandom, not me, I stuck around stupidly, left the building. You had a final hurrah with Aquaman, didn't you? And the other half of the audience left once you brought Henry Cavill back and then reversed that decision. Or should I say, James Gunn did when he fired him. Yes, James Gunn, and yes, Sam Dejan reviews. Henry Cavill was fired by James Gunn. When you reverse a decision that's been made to bring an employee back, he's fired. I'm very well aware that he didn't have a contract at the time he was brought back because it was all very quick and very sudden. Hollywood do very quick deals, change their minds very, very quickly depending where the air is blowing. I know this for a fact. I grew up in the entertainment industry. I spent a lot of my childhood around Hollywood, around Pinewood in the UK. I spent 6 months of my adult life out there trying to make it as well. So I know this. So it's irrelevant that he didn't have a contract. But basically, bringing Henry Cavill back, then firing him just months later is like blowing air into a balloon and deflating it again. Because let's look at Shazam! Fury of the Gods. It's a perfectly good, solid movie. Should have made more money. Wonder why people didn't go and watch it. Because they fired Henry Cavill. The Flash movie. Not the best version of the Flashpoint graphic novel. There were issues with the VFX, but it should have made more money than it did. It barely made 300 million. That film should have at the very least, made 500 to 600 million. And that would have been solid for them. Not what they were expecting, the way they were hyping it up, but it should have done better. And it would have done if they didn't fire Henry Cavill. They deflated the balloon. And then Blue Beetle, which is only just made around 50 million globally, not domestically, globally. That's a terrible result. The film cost 120 million. It doesn't matter that he's an unknown character. He's a popular DC character with DC fans, and there should have been some interest. But there wasn't for many, many reasons. Because when you're making a film about the Latino community, you can't be spending $120 million on it, but no matter what they spent on it, it's only made 50 million globally a week after it's been released. It's problematic. These films keep on flopping because they fired Snyder and they removed Henry Cavill after they brought him back. This is where the DC fans have gone. It's plain and simple. You can't keep on playing with our emotions. And if the DCEU is failing right now, imagine the danger signs, the red flags and the warning signs for Superman Legacy and the DC Universe. Let's see what the Hollywood Reporter have to say. It's a very interesting article and I like it a lot. And I really wanted to talk about this issue today because this is an issue I'm really passionate about. Where have all the DC fans gone? After a string of bombs with a reboot on the horizon, Warner Brothers has to do more than make fans believe a man can fly. It has to make them believe that this time there's a willingness to see that flight to its destination. Now that is a very interesting thing that the article author has actually said, because he's making a point without saying a point. Snyder never flew to his destination. They never allowed him. David Ayer's been talking about the heartbreak of not seeing his vision of his Suicide Squad movie being finalized. And people keep on, trashing him. And it's not fair. You've got to understand, he's not just a director who was brought on by a studio to make a movie they wanted him to make. He was making his and Zack's movie. It was part of the Snyderverse. Warner Brothers used to be a very, very brave studio. They allowed Oliver Stone to make JFK, one of the bravest decisions in corporate studio history. A very powerful movie that makes a powerful statement, lots of powerful statements about the American government and the world we live in yesteryear and today. So if they could do that, why wasn't Zack Snyder and David Ayer allowed to do their thing? Because WB was then being run by cowards and not the brave people, titans of industry, that were running WB before. And that's why. It's been more than a decade since Man of Steel ushered in the DCEU. And 10 years this very week since Ben Affleck was announced to play Batman in Zack Snyder's cinematic saga. We all know the turmoil that endeavor ultimately resulted in, and the seemingly ceaseless restructuring of DC that followed partially as a result. So yeah, he's making some interesting points, and this guy's a bit interesting because, well, he seems to be a little bit miffed about certain situations, and let's see where he's going with this. I mean, let's talk about Ben Affleck. Me, like many people, reacted badly to that announcement. All I could think about is the Daredevil movie. I thought, why are you doing this, Zack? But that's when I learned you shouldn't make, these quick judgments. You shouldn't be reactive. And I was reactive and I was wrong. Ben Affleck is the best Batman and best Bruce Wayne, finito. And I want to see the Batman movie. That's something else they took away from us. But for now, let's journey back to the summer of 2013, a simpler yet undeniably passionate age. The noise from comic book movie fans circling the newly minted DC Extended Universe was near deafening. That summer, everyone had an opinion both on Man of Steel with its controversial third act in which Superman killed Zod, and the casting of Affleck, who still hadn't quite come clean of the spandex stench of 2003's Daredevil, yet was somehow supposed to measure up to Christian Bale's beloved Batman, and he did. And beyond what Bale did, if you ask me. The DCEU was shiny and new, and whether reactions were positive or negative, everyone had an opinion on its future. Fan theories took hold quickly. Comic creators took sides. Bloggers discovered they could gain control of the narrative, and that's where the problem lies. narrative early, and DC fans fortified defenses and stockpiled ammunition. In just a few years, they would take what was theoretically supposed to be the fun comics movies, superheroes, and turn it into pure misery, a war of personal attacks, vendettas, cult mentalities, antagonistic journalism, and career-altering decisions. So it's an interesting description. Yes, it has become a fringe fandom, but make no mistake, these DCEU movies flopping prove that there's more than the Snyder fandom that are not happy with the firing of Snyder and the exit of Cavill. It proves it. Cut to 10 years later, and Henry Cavill is no longer the Man of Steel. Ben Affleck is no longer Batman. Zack Snyder is building a universe at Netflix with his Army of the Dead and Rebel Moon franchises. Joss Whedon is persona non grata in Hollywood, and that guy who showed everyone just how successful the Guardians of the Galaxy could be, James Gunn, just wrapped up the Guardians trilogy on a successful note and is now the co-head of DC Studios alongside Peter Safran, a guy who was part of the old regime. Make it make sense. Let's see if there's some honesty about James Gunn. I doubt it. This is Access Media after all. Together, they are relaunching the universe. No, they're not. They're continuing and recycling the old one. As the DCU, and as for the DCEU, Blue Beetle is in theatres, though sadly it seems few know it. Let's say that again. Sadly, it seems few know it. No, everybody knows it. They've decided not to go. Stop the spin. Is it the penultimate instalment of the DCEU paving the way for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, or is it the DCU's first entry? Few seem to know the answer to that one either, and that's on James Gunn. But to be fair to him, he has tried to explain the situation. So we're accurate with our reporting. He said that Blue Beetle was the first DCU character, and Superman Legacy was the first DCU movie. Given Gunn's perplexing comments that Blue Beetle is the first DCU character, but not the first DCU film, Blue Beetle's opening weekend, among the lowest in the franchise's history, comes after a string of box office misses, including The Flash, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, Black Adam, and COVID-affected titles Wonder Woman 84 and The Suicide Squad. As Gunn and Safran tee up their relaunch with a slate film and television projects, pundits are wondering, where have all the DC film fans gone? And of course, pundits will never be honest about the situation. Let's see if you are. A decade of constantly shifting decisions, executive musical chairs, overly aggressive critics, and overly aggressive fans have left DC fandom a house divided. But you see, we're all overly aggressive because we're passionate. And you, the author of this article, who's judging all of us, if you're not passionate, it's because you don't care. And that's okay. You're surveying the situation, but we must get things right. The reflections of which we can see all over social media. It's a swamp that even Swamp Thing would be hesitant to dip a mossy toe into. There are those who are optimistic about the DCU's future and eager for a reboot following Gunn and Safran's unveiling of Chapter 1 in January. But it's not a reboot, not a full one. There are those who are puzzled over what the DCU actually is, given the mixed messaging behind some actors and projects continuing. Like the Suicide Squad spin-off series Peacemaker, which while most will not, there are those who lament that Snyder did not get to finish the saga he envisioned. Let's see that again. While most will not, this is not true by the way, there are those who lament that Snyder did not get to finish the saga as he envisioned. But there are others who have moved on, just as the director has. Now, here we go. This is something else. Like many things I'm going to have to do is correct this. Zack Snyder hasn't moved on. He's making Rebel Moon. He's doing his Army of the Dead franchise. Snyder wants back with DC. He wants to finish his arc. He wants us to keep fighting. He has not moved on. But you're another propaganda merchant. But I will stand by this. I do like the article because it's important to have these conversations at the very least. There are those who find a reboot unnecessary given the decade of work that's gone into building the DCU. Why is it important to do a reboot as they've decided to bring in Gunn and Safran to continue to be part of DC? Because that isn't making any money. They've tried to recycle what Snyder did again and again. It's not working. You have to start again. That's why it's so important. There are those who have taken a cult-like approach to Snyder's films, making them and him their entire identity. You see, it's when I don't like it when they start talking about cults. It's not a cult, it's an admiration, and it's a feeling of injustice, what the man's been through. Now, if you want to call that a cult, that's up to you. But what I would call a cult is a cult, the Hollywood Reporter, that basically are no longer journalists and just do what the studios tell them to do. That's why we call you access media. You're just there to continue getting access and you don't care about independent journalism. You're told what to say and then you write what you're told to say, and that's where the problem is. And crowding out those who were just fans of the movies and didn't conjure up images of Eminem's stand with violent threats and mobilized harassment. Wow, this guy's really going for it now. This does, you see, WB are very desperate. It sounds like we're going back to the fake propaganda about the Snyderverse stand. So it's very interesting. So I can sniff their fear from here. They're afraid. What's weird about these kind of articles? They never work and they just make the situation worse for the studio. So it's interesting. And there are those who have moved on from the whole comic book movie thing. Of course, no, they haven't. Everyone loves a good comic book movie. It doesn't matter if there's hundreds a year. If there's one good one, we'll watch it. Simple as that. Anyway, it's a difficult and often a hostile environment for any casual fan to thrive in. Now, this is an interesting one. Right, let me explain to you, but this is why they're wrong about casual fans. Casual fans, the actual people who support movies and go and watch movies, the general audience, and not on Twitter all day. They don't see what's going on between the Snyderverse and the studio. So again, they're trying to make out that these poor casual fans are being bullied and they find it difficult. And too much work for those, myself included, who are invested in these characters but find the online discourse to be filled with traps. Really, it sounds like you've already picked a side, my friend. Many of those who were excited about Man of Steel and Affleck back in the summer 2013 and found much to appreciate in the follow-up Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice 2016 have since receded to the background, keeping our DCU fandom close to the vest while being crowded out by the hashtag brigades and burn book zealots. You see, it's propaganda. So what they're saying is there's quieter fans that have been crowded out by the noise. That always happens in life. But the truth is, some people believe in what these fans are doing, but they ain't got the confidence to do it themselves. They don't have the confidence to come and do a YouTube video every day, right? And that's okay. Come and watch mine, and we can fight together. But don't tell me they don't agree with what's going on, that they don't want the Snyderverse restored. Zack Snyder hasn't moved on, and no lover of these films has moved on. If you have, my friend, you're not actually a fan, are you then? Now they're going to mention the MCU. Of course. While the MCU has been able to create a... Hang on a minute, I've lost the article. Right, here we are again. I'm back! While the MCU has been able to create a fairly unified fan base, though not without its own share of sycophants, of course. They love attacking fans, don't they? And antagonists, nobody really has a strong idea of what DC fans want or who the fans really are. Wow. Well, obviously you're emotionally stunted and intelligently stunted, so I'll explain to you the situation. All fandoms come from different walks of life, want and like different things, right? Football fans, rugby fans, American football fans, right? So when you talk about fans, not everyone wants the same thing. So you're never going to be able to please everyone. But what you want is an element of enjoyment and you want to make money. And that's what studios want. So fans are just different people who like different things of something they're a fan of. Do you understand now? It doesn't even feel possible for DC to have a celebratory DCU Hall H panel at San Diego Comic-Con, certainly not one without a plane flying over the city with a banner proclaiming Sell Snyder verse to Netflix, the latest hashtag campaign. Hang on a minute. Are you trying to say, because they flew that banner over Hall H, that you can't enjoy Comic-Con? Well, I tell you what, you must be a very, very weak person mentally if that's all it takes. Wow. Truthfully, it's barely possible to go to a movie theatre for a new DC film opening night and feel like you're there sharing the experience with like-minded fans. Right, as I've just explained to you, you're clearly, as I say, maybe you're a fan of Adolf Hitler where you think everyone should think the same way. That's not the point. Fans of one thing don't agree. There's no such thing as like-minded fans. You're dreaming, my friend. You clearly don't understand pop culture to be even saying this. Like-minded fans. That is, if you're sharing the theatre with anything other than rows of empty seats, it's difficult to generate any excitement about DC films. Unless, of course, it's related to Batman fans love Batman, but not Batman as a supporting character in a Flash adventure where he was represented in a shit way, by the way. Or Batman as an unseen reference in a Harley Quinn heist film. They just want Batman, oh how dare they. And if not him, then the Joker will do just fine. As it stands, Warner Brothers' safest future bets are the Batman Part 2 and Joker Folie à Deux, neither of which are part of the shared universe. And that's what the future should be, my friend. That makes up the upcoming DCU. And both reach beyond the core comic book movie fandom. On one hand, you can look at the poor turnout for the past year of DCEU films as a lack of faith in the brand from general audiences and fans, to the point where even the good movies like Blue Beetle, he's calling it a good movie. Just remember that. This is what these people are. They're access media and they're trying the best to toe the company line. The game is over. You lost. We won. But the truth is nobody won because we lost Snyder and we lost Cavill. In a day and age that doesn't appreciate real talent, make it like the MCU, that's the way run, are getting brushed off. But on the other, perhaps this string of box office disappointments casts a lasso of truth around audiences, revealing that when it comes to movies, DC fans en masse aren't broad fans of the characters and universe itself. In other words, we're not real fans because we're not going to watch creative bankruptcy in the cinema. Thanks for that. But of filmmakers, when we look back at the history of the most successful DC films and the ones that created passionate fan bases, there is almost always a distinctive filmmaker who can fit into auteur theory behind them. Richard Donner, Tim Burton, Christopher Nolan, Zack Snyder, James Wan and Matt Reeves are all filmmakers with instantly recognizable styles and directional traits. Hell, we could even add Joel Schumacher to that list, as even his films have found their audience as of late. The fact that the lion's share of those filmmakers took on Batman has only cemented his place as the biggest draw for DC fans. Although we must remember that Batman didn't even make $1 billion, but 750 was a good effort, but it didn't make the money maybe that they wanted. But you know, that's studios, they always want to make more money. It seems like it's this factor, not necessarily characters themselves, that really separates DC film projects from the MCU. The MCU has created a system in which fandom is generated by its characters and the directors. Now this is interesting. He's ignoring that Phase 4 and Phase 5 are failing, living in the imaginary world of Phase 3 and Endgame, where everything in the garden was rosy. Very interesting. For the most part, are secondary. The fans love Spider-Man, but they're not buying John Watts shirts or expressing interest in his personal life because John Watts isn't an auteur director. He's just someone who's been asked to come in to do a job. You see, I have to translate this man's propaganda who's writing this article. It's very important. Anyway, but DC fandom is driven by filmmakers elevated to celebrity status, and as a result, trust is placed in their decisions. It's that rationale that led to Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, and Blue Beetle, all of which were marketed as Marvel Light, failing to draw out fandom. Their target audience already had versions of those movies in the MCU, but here we go. Black Adam made just shy of 400 million, as I explained, or maybe it wasn't in this version of the video I explained because I fucked up my previous attempt of doing today's video. Anyway, it made just shy of 400 million. With China, which it didn't have, it would have made more. So Black Adam surely wasn't really the problem. And the merits of representation that Black Adam and Blue Beetle offered, while commendable, are not a big enough draw in and of themselves, which is true. And what happens is they try and market films with representation. But Black Adam didn't do that. Blue Beetle did. Black Adam made more money. But when Warner's put someone like Matt Reeves or James Gunn behind those titles, then there's a drop. And everything from unconventional casting choices to character alterations becomes easier for fans not only to embrace, but defend. But James Gunn isn't as popular as he once was. He doesn't have the draw and the faith of Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan. That's another fact. People are already questioning his decisions. So you're wrong there. The future of the DCU relies on Warner's awareness that much of this particular fan base is less interested in cinematic universes and cameos and more invested in filmmakers with distinct, sometimes even controversial visions. And that's where the problem lies. They've just greenlit a cinematic universe, and this author of this article has just admitted that's not really what the majority want. We want the auteurs, we want a distinct vision, but we're not getting that. Luckily, we've still got Reeves and Phillips doing their thing, but if that was the whole direction, they'd be making more money and they'd be gaining more excitement, and people would even be watching these mid-DCEU movies right now. Those are films that fans will rally behind, but hopefully in a well-adjusted way that doesn't make you think you're going to see them inserting themselves into their director's family photos. You just can't help yourself, can you loser? James Gunn certainly seems like a filmmaker who can deliver an inspired take on Superman with Superman Legacy. Right. He's a very talented writer-director. We'll see if he can do it, even if he gets the chance to do it. Don't forget, prior to the 2009 writer's strike, Bryan Singer, Brandon Routh were returning with a Superman Returns sequel. By the time that strike was over, Brandon was no longer Superman, and Bryan Singer was no longer directing Superman, Man of Steel. So who knows? Can this guy deliver? Maybe. But I do have issues with James Gunn. I do have worries with his storytelling style and his style as a director in terms of Superman. And I'm concerned that the studio want him to copy and paste Superman the movie, because we're talking about 2025, right? We've moved on from 1978. I've mentioned that a lot of times. So there is concerns, but this is a pro-James Gunn piece. He's mentioned that he's confusing fans just a little bit, just to pepper some variety there, but it's clear where this guy's going. But he has spat some truths. It is a good article. He has built in the fan base, which, now this is interesting, he has a built-in fan base, as has Zack Snyder. Now, who's got the bigger fan base? We'll see. Which truthfully matters a lot less with general audiences in the grand scheme of things, most folks. And what you'll find is extremist propaganda merchants say folks. When people class people as folks, it's a little tell. It's a little red flag. All these extreme leftists say folks. Always remember that. Anyway, most folks just want to see a good movie. And if that is delivered upon, a new fan base can emerge. As a filmmaker, Gunn has earned a lot of trust, but for fans, both old and new, to stick around after Legacy, he's going to need more than a blueprint for the future. He's going to need a league of filmmakers in whom audiences can put their trust in. But that's not the plan. Who trusts Andy Muschietti after the Flash movie, after he said he purposely made the VFX shit. Right, that's who's doing the Batman movie, Brave and the Bold, in Gunn's DCU. He's not bringing in directors we can trust. He's just going to bring in yes men and yes women. And that's the problem. He's doing exactly the opposite, as this very guy has said, that we, the DC fans, want. We want auteurs, we want individual takes. That's what we want, not a cinematic universe. Warner Brothers isn't going to win back everyone, and it would be a mistake, one that the studio made in the past with the DCU, to even think that they can. Attempting to make films for everyone resulted in the theatrical cut of Justice League 2017, a film for no one. And it will take time to rebuild DC's fandom. Let's say that again. It will take time to rebuild DC's fandom, to unify the parts that can be unified. Fandoms are never unified. Go and insert yourself in any fandom. What fandom is unified? It's not possible. Everyone wants different things, and that's okay, by the way. And simply let the rest go. Not everyone is going to be sold, and expecting $1 billion Superman film out of the gate would be absurd. Already making excuses for James Gunn's Superman legacy. Superman should be making $800 to $1 billion. There's no reason, if it's a great Superman movie, why you can't get that. But of course, we've been down that road before. Perhaps the simplest lesson for this current regime. One of the guys, right, Peter Safran, was part of the old regime. That's why I lack trust in what they're doing as well. Comes from the film that spearheaded a DC cinematic universe in the first place. The Dark Knight. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded. That means offering consistency and not changing directions every time. Some critics and certain segments of the fandom become blinded by nostalgia or throw tantrums when the story isn't told the way they wanted it to be. That means decisiveness and letting filmmakers do more than simply adapt the familiar. But this is exactly what James Gunn's DC universe will be. It will be very faithful to the comics. I'm not saying it shouldn't be. They're going to give you a new age Superman the movie, and it's all going to be a lot lighter and brighter than you can imagine. It's going to be interesting because this is from the mind of James Gunn, and James Gunn has a certain sense of humour, certain qualities with dramatic writing. So it'll be interesting. But if you're looking for talented young directors to come in, you're wrong. The directors will be directed, and there's where the problem lies. But the challenge, what we think we want from these movies and what we think we know about these characters, the DCU has to do more than make fans believe a man can fly. It has to make them believe that this time there's a willingness to stay the course and see that flight to its destination. Only then will the DC film fans be found again. So, very, 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 very interesting article. There were some bad points to it. The attacks on Snyder fans, obviously, and stuff like that, and the propaganda that goes with these extremists, because they're all based in California, LA, Hollywood, right? And they all think the same shit. But it was a very interesting article. I did like it. And basically, what he's saying in this article is, this time they have to go the distance. And the irony isn't lost on me that James Gunn is working under a man in Zaslav that won't go the distance. If you fail one time, especially with your opening movie, a Superman movie named Superman Legacy, he will fire you, James. It's as simple as that. And this is what happened with Black Adam. I didn't realise how important Black Adam was to Adrian DeLuca and to bring in Cavill back and a different future. If that film succeeded, we would be in a different direction now. Maybe even eventually restoring the Snyderverse. But because that movie didn't make what Zaslav wanted it to make, they went to Gunn. Gunn was a third and fourth choice. It's very, very interesting. And Zaslav could change his mind. And here's another roadblock that people don't understand is a roadblock, and I've mentioned it before. It's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Zaslav wants $1 billion from that movie. And he expects James Gunn and his fandom to bring it to him. This guy has said that James Gunn has got a built-in fandom. If that's the case, when James Gunn told them to go and watch Shazam! Fury of the Gods, where was his fandom? They weren't there. You're asking where the DC fans are, where are the James Gunn fans? when he told them the Flash movie was one of the best comic book movies he'd ever seen, where were James Gunn's fans? Nowhere. And then Blue Beetle, him and Saffron standing at the premiere telling people to come. Where were James Gunn's fans? Mr. Article Writer. James Gunn doesn't really have fans. He may have a few sycophants out there, but he doesn't have the pull of Zack Snyder. James Gunn has some MCU peak fans from the franchise's peak. On his side, we have a few DC fans who think he's Harry Potter, that he can wave a magic wand. But he can't. There's no magic wand here, but good movies. The future isn't a cinematic universe. As the man said himself, and he's right, DC fans want auteurs they can trust and believe in. We want a definitive vision, and it doesn't necessarily have to uphold faith with what the comics have done. It would be nice now and again. But if you're asking where the DC fans have all gone, let me reiterate to you so there is no misunderstanding, because I'm a man who's talked straight and I like people to understand me. The firing of Snyder and the firing of Henry Cavill is the reason that the DC fans have vanished. And you all know what to do to get them back.